What is up, guys, and welcome back to another video. And today we're going to discuss 5 times Rotten Tomato got it wrong with superhero movies. Number 5, Watchmen. If you were to ask hardcore fans to make a list of their favorite comic books, it would be no surprise to see Watchmen in everybody's top 3. Because of the story's uniqueness and complexity, Watchmen is known for being one of the greatest comics of all time. Despite the fact that the movie was extremely faithful towards the comic, it still managed to receive a low score for most movie review sites. Based on Rotten Tomatoes, Watchmen is ranked below superhero movies such as Ant-Man, Iron Man 2, and The Incredible Hulk. So now you're probably wondering, why is the comic book praised while the movie is criticized even though they're almost exactly the same? In order to answer this, you have to rewind to 2009 and take a look at how people were feeling before they watched the movie. Most fans and critics didn't believe that it was possible to make an accurate adaptation of Watchmen because there's so much depth and meaning to the plot. People feared that the movie was going to ruin a story that meant so much to them. Rather than giving the movie a chance to prove them wrong, people already made up their minds and decided that it was going to be a disgrace to the source material. Zack Snyder, the director of the movie, may have a difficult time creating original stories, but he's an expert when it comes to bringing the pages of a comic book to life. Snyder even improved upon the comic book by slightly altering the ending to make it more realistic. In the comic, Ozymandias creates a plan involving a giant squid to terrorize New York. Since people who haven't read the comic may find that a little bit ridiculous, Snyder replaced the squid with Dr. Manhattan. He did the impossible by creating an accurate adaptation and arguably making it even better than the comic book, but apparently that wasn't enough to earn a high Rotten Tomatoes score. As more time passes since its release date, more people are starting to recognize Watchmen as an incredible movie that undeservingly received hate. Number 4, Power Rangers. When most people hear the word superhero, they probably think about characters such as Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, and Captain America. Even though the Power Rangers aren't a part of the DC or Marvel universe, they're still considered a superhero team. When the movie came out last year, people mostly complained because it was too cheesy or too ridiculous. Critics would have had a much better outlook on the movie if they were more open-minded and accepted the fact that Power Rangers is supposed to have a corny story. There is nothing wrong with a movie being purely enjoyable and not containing any valuable subject matter. Some critics automatically give fun popcorn movies low scores because it does not fit the criteria of an Oscar-worthy movie. Power Rangers may not be deserving of a Best Picture nomination, but it was still a fantastic movie. The strongest part about the movie is the director was able to successfully make a few changes to the source material so he could modernize the story and characters. If he tried to exactly copy the 90s TV show, the movie probably wouldn't be as good as it was. Also, it's important to note that Power Rangers felt like an actual team. When it comes to superhero teams, many writers struggle at developing friendships between the members. Though Power Rangers did have a few flaws, it was able to perfectly make all the characters feel like they were friends rather than a group of people who had no other choice but to work together to save the world. Number 3, Venom. This is a perfect example of a movie that people spent days hating on before its release date just because they wanted to join the anti-Venom bandwagon. Since Venom is a part of the Marvel universe that Sony is trying to build, some people were disappointed because they know they'll never be able to see him interacting with Tom Holland's Spider-Man. As soon as it was announced that Sony was going to make a Venom movie, most people were against it because they didn't see the point of making a movie about the villain without including the superhero. The one question everyone asked themselves was, how the hell are they going to explain Eddie Brock's storyline in a universe where Spider-Man doesn't even exist? This is a similar feeling people had when DC announced that they were going to make an Elseworld Joker movie. At first, people thought it was a ridiculous idea, but they completely changed their minds once they saw the pictures of the Joker on set. Some fans did not realize that it was possible to successfully make a Venom movie without Spider-Man until it came out and proved that this character doesn't have to be part of the MCU for people to find him interesting. Tom Hardy's performance as Venom is what truly made this movie special. He managed to make the character so likable that people were perfectly fine with the idea of the Sony universe and MCU being separated. If you take a look at the audience score and compare it to the critics' score, you'll realize that there's a huge divide between the two groups. This should be enough to prove that Rotten Tomatoes isn't always a reliable source when it comes to figuring out if you should watch a movie or not. Number 2, Spider-Man 3. The first two movies of the Raimi trilogy were so well done that they set an extremely high bar to reach for the third one. In 2007, Raimi was given the difficult task of not only meeting these super high expectations from the fans, but also keeping the studio happy by adding Venom into the movie. When people showed up to watch Spider-Man 3, they thought the movie was going to be just as strong as the first two, which is why they were disappointed when they realized that it had a few flaws. You can acknowledge that Spider-Man 3 was the weakest movie in the original trilogy, while still believing that it was a thoroughly entertaining movie. There were so many positive aspects to the movie, such as James Franco giving his best performance as Harry Osborn, and Thomas Hayden Church delivering a heartbreaking performance as Sandman. One of the best parts about the movie was that the audience was able to sympathize with most of the characters. They felt bad for Harry because in the previous movie, he found out that his best friend supposedly killed his father, and they felt bad for Sandman because he was willing to go to great lengths to help his sick daughter. Another reason why Spider-Man 3 should have gotten a higher score on Rotten Tomatoes is because it had a story that was never told before. Even before the symbiote was attached to Peter, he was already beginning to experience some major ego boost because he was finally able to balance his love life and superhero life. Most of the time, superheroes find themselves in trouble because of bigger threats that they cannot control, but in this movie, Peter Parker is the main cause of his problems. Number 1, Batman vs Superman. It's nearly impossible to create a list of movies that did not deserve so much criticism without including Batman vs Superman. Though the movie is far from perfect, that doesn't necessarily mean that it was terrible. You don't have to be a fan of BVS to admit that a 27% score is an unfair score. The editing was a little choppy at times, and it did feel like DC was rushing to catch up with Marvel, but those aren't strong enough reasons to label the movie as a complete mess. Instead of choosing to focus on the positives such as cinematography, score, dialogue, and action, critics decided to only pay attention to all the negatives. Similar to Watchmen and Venom, most people were expecting the movie to perform poorly. The reason why they were so unsupportive of BVS is because they had no faith in the creative team. In 2016, Snyder already had a track record of releasing multiple movies that were considered failures. People criticized Watchmen by claiming that the story wasn't able to translate well to the big screen, and completely tore apart Man of Steel for showing an inaccurate portrayal of Superman. Sucker Punch and 300, which were also directed by Snyder, are other examples of movies that caused him to develop a reputation as a bad filmmaker. People no longer trusted Snyder to have so much power over the DCEU. As long as he was directing the movie, there was no way it was going to do well. Also, some people misunderstood certain scenes from the movie. A perfect example would be the infamous Martha scene, also known as the most controversial moment in the movie. The assumption is that Batman stops attacking Superman because their mothers share the same name, but this isn't true. Throughout the movie, Batman viewed Superman as a symbol of destruction, which is why he was extremely surprised when he found out he had a mother. This caused him to view Superman less as a god and more as a human. If people were to go back and take a better look at the deeper meanings within the movie, they may realize that BVS is much better than they originally thought. And that is it for the video, guys. As always, thanks for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video.